Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James, joined once again by my co-host Cody. Cody, how are you this fine Tuesday evening?
James, I'm great. You pointed the correct way. You remembered towards the towels. It's different for
towels.
you.
Go to the towels.
I am fantastic, James, as I would also say phenomenal. Phenomenal.
You do say that a lot.
I do say phenomenal a lot.
Like
but
go-to word, buddy.
I don't know why. Whatever. I'm doing great. Don't mind the weird things in my background, like the drill here and the book here. Doing some cleaning and rearranging and stuff just winds up sitting places for a little bit while I'm doing that. My book bag's down here under my armpit. Anyways, no, I'm good. I'm great. We're gonna go over basically week 1 of training camp today. We're gonna highlight the highlights of the day, or go over the highlights of each day. As well as a couple announcements for the Steelers Hall of Honor. Those players were announced, a couple other things as we go on. But before we get to those things, James, it's the first podcast of the new month. You know what that means?
It means we got to talk about last month's numbers and the big winners and losers in states and countries. So first, top 5 downloading states from the United States of America last month.
States.
Not United States of Canada or anything like that, just
Nope,
in case you were curious.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about Canada in a minute, though. Pennsylvania, number 1 state. Soccer. In a while, they dethroned, and they were almost dethroned by Kentucky, who came in a close second.
It was a close second.
A tie at number 3 for Mississippi and New York. Shout out to my sister. I know she listens, so appreciate that very much. And then a tie at 5th place between Illinois and Ohio.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, Ohio used to be number 2 every single month. And
that's weird that it wasn't.
Sliding back.
That's weird that it wasn't.
They're sliding back these days, man.
Maybe
Tell me about them top countries, Codes.
Yeah, top countries. So we're only going to go over the top 4 today because just want to go keep it short and sweet. Top 4, United States. Shocking, I know, United States. Coming in 2nd place was Canada. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why you're showing me Lawrence Timmons. If you're showing me a cup, I can show you a cup too. Steelers cup.
Boy.
This is the last thing I ever bought at Heinz Field. But you know what? As my shirt says that you can't read on YouTube because it's backwards, it's still Heinz Field to me. Anyways, number 3 top countries downloaded. Spain came in number 3, and a very close 4th place was Israel. Israel. That's all. That's it.
Appreciate all our listeners outside the States. Definitely appreciate your support. And some growing numbers again in Canada, almost like it was during the regular season last year. So if any of you are returning listeners from last regular season, we appreciate you. Welcome back. We do go in the off season as well. If you just don't feel like listening in the off season, I understand. It's not always as exciting. But
we try to make it exciting. We try to make it exciting for you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah,
absolutely. Keep you on your toes.
Speaking of exciting, our next show, we are going to be broadcasting from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. On Friday, we're going to the Friday Night Lights practice at St. Vincent High School. And then the Saturday, we're going to hit up the practice at St. Vincent College.
Yep.
So back-to-back practices. We're going to record an episode while we're down there. And we're also going to give you guys our 52-man roster predictions. Before the preseason game, the very first preseason game, 52-man roster predictions. We'll do another one right before the season starts off.
You said 52 and I got confused.
Okay.
53-man roster prediction?
Sure, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Long snappers matter, James. They count as a roster position.
That's true.
With that being said, there is also a chance we go Facebook Live while we're down there recording the show. I'm not sure on the tech side if I'll be able to get a video up for YouTube or not. If I can't, or potentially even if I can, we will also try to do a Facebook Live at some point while we are down there. So keep an eye on that as well. If you're not on the Facebook page yet, make sure you go and like us at all the social media accounts, at Steelers by the Lake on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. But other than that, let's kick it off. Oh, you got something else?
If any of you are going to go to training camp, either one of those days, Friday or Saturday,
we'll be there.
Hit us up on media. Hit us up on social media. We'd love to hang out, say hi, shake hands,
eat a hot dog.
Yeah, eat a hot dog, maybe buy you a Pepsi.
Pepsi.
Yeah.
Pepsi Cola. Okay. Let's start this off real quick.
Gabriel Iglesias, man, tell me you go.
I
tell me
got
you've
it. Oh
seen
yeah,
that.
I got it. That's why I said it.
Yes.
He's
so
he's
freaking
fluffy.
funny.
He's not fat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Deontay Johnson starts his hold in, very similar to what another Steelers player did last year, James.
Mhm. Yes, Mr. TJ Watt performed a hold in, which was a new strategy. We hadn't seen that before. The most recent player before that, we saw Le'Veon Bell, and that was definitely a hold out. He just didn't come. He didn't show up at all. TJ had a different strategy and said, I'm going to come. I'm just not going to do any full contact stuff because I'm not getting injured. Deontay had been doing some drills, going through some one-on-one, or not one-on-one stuff, but some solo drills, some positional stuff, running some routes, but nothing in any of the contact drills. Can't blame him.
No, not at all.
Honestly, this is the right way to approach it. If you're looking for the deal, if you're worried that you don't want to get hurt before you get the deal, go to camp, show up. And when they're doing team drills, he's off on the sides catching from a jugs machine. So he's still getting work in while he's doing it. So honestly, I really appreciate and respect his approach to this whole thing.
100%.
He's been a real professional. He hasn't been complaining and whining about it. That doesn't mean that I think Pittsburgh's going to pay him $25 million a year. Because that's about what the going rate is now after Terry McLaurin getting paid, after DK Metcalf getting paid. These guys got like 23, 24 million a year. And usually the next guy up gets a bigger contract, not a smaller one. So I wonder if Pittsburgh's going to be willing to pay up as much money as he's probably wanting, which I can't imagine he'd want less than those guys. So that's at least 23 million a year. I feel like they're probably comfortable giving him in that 18 to 20 a year. And I don't think for a second he'll take that. I think that's too low. So I think Pittsburgh's going to have to offer more and get into at least that 21, 22 for him to entertain it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if Pittsburgh's smart, here's what you do. And I know that you can only do so much. It's not like you offer this to him and he immediately accepts it. I think you offer him a big contract like what the other players are getting. Maybe not quite as big due to the fact that I don't think he's put up quite the same numbers. We've talked about that before when we were talking about Deontay. But I mean, even guys like Deebo Samuel getting re-signed to a big contract. All these contracts are coming through. I think you put these contracts through, put this contract with him, and have it be incentive based. Obviously, he needs guaranteed money. I'm not saying don't guarantee anything.
And he'll demand the first 2 years are guaranteed of it, fully guaranteed, because that's what everybody's getting.
Which is fine. But make it incentive heavy. Make him, if you're gonna claim to be, not that he said this, but I'm sure he thinks it, one of the best receivers in the NFL, you want to get paid for it, play like it. If you play like it, we'll pay you like it. That's how it should work, in my opinion. So I understand certain aspect of it being guaranteed because of injuries and future and all this other stuff, but make it incentive heavy is what I'm saying.
Are you saying then if it was like a 4-year deal, you would make years 3 and 4 incentive heavy? Because you basically have to fully guarantee the first 2 years or he's not going to sign.
Yes. And you can technically, they can put things in there to make it so, stats that he gets this year could pay out in 2025. They could do that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think that at some point
you have stuff where, like, if you have 90 catches three seasons in a row, then you get the bonus on the third year.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
So they can do something like that to make it worthwhile for them and worthwhile for him. Obviously, those first 2 years up front, guaranteed whatever the price would be per year, and then make it that as long as he's still playing well, he gets paid. I don't think that's whatever. Omar Khan, hire me. I'm ready.
I like the ideas. You're thinking outside of the box on it. And let's be realistic. We've seen some up and downs from Deontay Johnson in 2020. He had a real issue with dropping the ball, and he fixed it for the most part last year until the end of the year when the season was on the line. Then he started dropping the ball again at the end of the season. But yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I think having some heavy incentives in there is probably a good idea to make sure he stays hungry. And then works harder towards that third contract. Because I doubt it's going to be more than a 3 or 4 year deal, because that's just what everybody's doing these days. Nobody's signing 5 or 6 year deals. And you can't really blame them because it's risky for both sides. But yeah, why not, man? Throw some incentives on there.
See what happens. All right, day one of training camp. It happened. It was in the books and it was great. minus an injury to Miles Killebrew. Injured his pec. Was it torn pectoral?
No, not a torn
Okay.
pec because he would have had surgery already. He hasn't had an arm in a sling since in practices. He's been there. He's on the sidelines. Doesn't look like he's bandaged up in any way. So it's probably just a strained pectoral, which so they're letting it heal up. And he hasn't practiced since yet. So we're talking about a week later, and he's still out.
He's probably heavy
out of line.
Yeah, he's probably heavy icing it, allowing it to heal over time. A lot of the times with strained pectoral muscles, they're very easy to re-injure and re-injure worse.
Yes.
So
yes,
I don't blame them at all.
If he re-injures it, he'll probably tear it, right?
Yep, 100%. Yep. So that was it for day one. Nothing really crazy with day one, other than obviously Deontay Johnson was present but not active in team drills and contact drills. Miles Killebrew injures his pec. Day two, James, Pat Freiermuth.
For a little clarification for the folks, we're kind of going to go over the injuries, and then afterwards, we're going to talk a little bit about some of these guys, some of the winners and losers at different positions.
Right.
Who's really splashing? Is there an undrafted running back maybe who's really popped the last couple of days? That kind of thing. So day two.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, look for shadowing for sure. Pat Freiermuth, unfortunately, had a hamstring on day two. Does not look to be a serious thing. But again, similar to what we saw with the pectoral muscle, you don't want to push it until that's fully healed. Otherwise, he's going to have a higher chance of injuring it and injuring it worse. You don't want him to tear that hamstring or he's going to miss 3 months. So right now, it's just a sore hamstring. It's probably a sprain. And he's walking around. He hasn't participated in any practice since, but I understand in camp yesterday, he was doing some light jogging on the sidelines with Minkah Fitzpatrick. So it's a good sign. Usually they start doing that sort of thing before they start practicing again. So I won't be surprised if by the time we're talking to you next week, Pat Freiermuth is practicing at St. Vincent High School.
Yeah, I agree with that. Trubisky started the week he went 3 out of 4 for 7 shots with 3 touchdowns, 3 and 4, not 3 out of 4. 3 and 4 in 7 shots with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception.
It is 3 out of 4. It was just him and Mason.
Okay. I was making sure.
Mason got the other 3 snaps.
3.
Yeah.
Got it. So 3 out of 4 and 7 shots, 3 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. At least there were no incompletions.
Yeah, man. And Spillane was the benefactor of the interception, which it sounds like he's having himself a nice camp so far. I think that was a batted pass, and then Spillane got it. And then fun thing at the end of that play, Mason Cole was the offensive lineman who chased him and kind of edged him out of bounds, so he wasn't able to return it all the way. And apparently some of the defensive players didn't like that too much, and it turned into a big old scrum. So interesting to see Mason Cole mixing it up, and I like to hear that he didn't give up on the play, that our new starting center had no problem giving full pursuit when a turnover happened to try to make sure it didn't turn into 6 the other way, even in a practice, even before full pads. You know, he's already showing that kind of effort. I'm hearing a lot already about the offensive lineman pushing the pile, which we've been talking about for 3 seasons.
Yep.
We want to see him push the pile. We saw it a little bit at the beginning of the season last year, and then it just kind of stopped, and then we didn't see it again the rest of the year. It looks like that might be back.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see it in person. I'll tell you that right now.
Hell yeah, man.
It's always going to be different, even on TV. Seeing it on TV or seeing it in person will be different than hearing it about what's happening at training camp. So I am super excited with that. On top of that, moving on to day 3, because that's where we're at now. Do you want to talk more about it? Yeah, okay, you don't.
Let's move on.
Chase Claypool injures his shoulder. That's about the main highlight from that. I don't think he's practiced since.
He has not practiced since, but again, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier with Miles Killebrew. No arm in a sling, no visible ice during practice. He's out there running around with guys having a good time. He's just not participating, which all indications are, once again, that this is just a minor injury, and we will probably see him soon.
Yep. Day 4, Marcus Allen has a hamstring injury and Connor Hayward has an ankle injury. Those are the 2 notable ones. And Pickett gets his first shot at 7 shots. Only
threw a
only one
tutty,
shot.
baby.
Only one shot, was 1-for-1 on it, threw a touchdown. I can't remember the player that caught. I want to say Tyler Vaughn was the one that caught it, and it
Yeah, it was the
and
back of
the
the roster guy.
yeah, and the coaches had disputed whether or not it was a touchdown. I don't care. I'm gonna say it's a touchdown. Whatever.
It's a touchdown, baby.
Touchdown.
Kenny Tutties.
Kenny Tutties.
That's all he does is throw
Wow.
touchdown passes.
Wow. Okay. Moving on, James. Let's talk about this Hall of Honor.
I ain't ready to move on from
Okay.
this yet because of Marcus Allen and Connor Hayward. Connor's flashing a little bit. Marcus Allen is one of the few middle linebackers that I haven't really heard much about. So he only got 3 days of full practice before getting injured. Again, with a hamstring injury, you probably expect him to miss a little bit of time. I won't be surprised if he misses the first preseason game because of how late in the game this is. Also, his most important position that he played last season was as the up back in the punt formation. So he was the personal protector, the only guy between the offensive linemen, which is all like linebackers, running backs, tight ends, whatever, and the punter. So he's the personal protector, right? Marcus Allen played that and started that last year. The first day of practice that they did that formation, he was not the starter at it. Now, he did it again the second day.
Yeah.
But they're already trying other people out that are likely to make the team, like Trey Norwood. He was the first one to get a shot at it. I don't think there's much of a chance that Trey Norwood doesn't make the team. Spoiler alert. I think he's going to make the team. He's too versatile. He's young. He flashed a lot in his rookie season. I like the way he looked on a lot of plays. This is a bad sign for Marcus Allen. If he doesn't recover from this hamstring, he's really going to have a difficult time making this roster. But back to, like you said, we're going to talk the Steelers Hall of Honor. 4 guys inducted into the Hall of Honor. Cody, do you want to go over some of these names?
The first one, I don't have one on me, unfortunately, which is very sad. Myron Cope, the creator of the terrible towel, the man, the myth, the legend, the one that came up with it, and the one that is now forever sealed in Pittsburgh's legacy, other than obviously the terrible towel. Myron Cope will be on the Hall of Honor, or in the Hall of Honor, I should call it technically. I don't know what more there is. Great guy. Myron Cope, great announcer for, 30, 40 years?
At least, yeah. Myron was the voice of Pittsburgh from the 70s all the way into my childhood. And I remember, like, my first Steelers games, Myron Cope was calling them, So a lot of fun. One of my favorite things to remember back on Myron Cope, for any of those who did have the pleasure of listening to him call games growing up, or even in your adulthood, whatever stage of life you were in at the time, he was known for making up words. One of his favorites was yoy and double yoy. And the reason he did this is because he was starting to have difficulty remembering some of the players' names, and a play would happen, and he couldn't get the name out fast enough, so he just started making up these words. So it would happen, and it'd be like yoy and double yoy, and he just couldn't figure out what to say. So he would do that to buy time until he could flip through his roster and get the guy's name in front of him, and then say, "Oh, it was so and so. Pass this to whoever, or this person, or whatever," or wait for the play-by-play guy to kick in with the name because he knew what was going on with them. But he was such a fun guy. He was so full of life and energy, even in his later years. Just a really, really fun announcer, and one of the greatest ones in the history, I would say, sports commentating, period. But yeah, well deserving of that honor. The second guy out of the group was an offensive lineman that, if any of you were fans of the 1970s team, if you were around back then, it was Sam Davis. Now, Sam was brought onto the team 1967 as an undrafted free agent, which is kind of a feat back then because they had like 20 rounds of the draft. So if you weren't drafted, you really were not as highly thought of. But between 1970 and 1979, he started at left guard for the Steelers. So he was on all 4 of those Super Bowl teams and actually made 4 Pro Bowls. So he was an incredible offensive lineman if he made 4 Pro Bowls through the course of his career. So that's Sam Davis. If you didn't know the name before, at least it's another name that you can think of now when people talk about great players from the 70s and the Franco Harris and the Mike Websters and the Lynn Swans, Joe Green, all these guys that are Hall of Famers. Sam Davis probably never going to get into the Hall of Fame, but a 4-time Pro Bowl offensive lineman from back then. He was an elite offensive lineman in his day.
100%. Don't mind me.
Next
James.
guy on the list here, Ray Matthews. Now, Ray was a running back and wide receiver for the Steelers between 1951 and 1959. Now, back then, it was pretty much mostly running.
Yeah.
So he was probably way more running back than wide receiver, and I think he just kind of alternated between those positions back then. If you were a running back, you were also a wide receiver. If you were a wide receiver, you
Makes
were
sense.
also a running back. So I think that's just kind of the way that worked. And then our fourth guy on the list, Cody, I know you can speak to this guy, so I'm going to let you really take the reins on it.
Oh, absolutely. I can speak to this guy. Heath Miller, probably the greatest tight end that I've ever seen play, at least for Pittsburgh, to clarify.
For Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Come on, for
Yeah,
Pittsburgh. I love my Steelers, but just for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Heath Miller was fantastic. I love seeing highlights of Steelers games because I sent James, I sent you a message the other day or a picture that I was watching a Steelers game. You just forget how involved he was in the game. He was absolutely a favorite target of Ben. Ben loved to go to him over the middle. Ben loved to go to him on the sidelines. Pretty much anywhere on the field, Ben liked to go to Heath. It was impressive. And Heath almost was always open, which was weird. At least in the highlights that I was watching, it didn't make any sense. But I guess it's because there was not normally much run after catch. He normally caught it and ran 5 or 10 yards and was taken down because he'd always try to run someone over. They'd take him out of the legs. Whatever. It was a great time. But Heath was, again, just a phenomenal player to watch. Phenomenal. There's the word.
There it is.
Enjoyable to watch him because he was also a good blocker. He wasn't afraid of a little contact. He went out. I mean, he was your standard hard nose, I'm going to run you over kind of player. Very similar to what we saw in one play with Vance McDonald and very similar to how we've seen kind of Pat Freiermuth play so far. Pat Freiermuth isn't afraid of contact. And speaking of Freiermuth, Heath is actually in the process right now of mentoring Pat Freiermuth. So that is actually, I think that speaks to Pat Freiermuth just as much as it speaks to about Heath. Heath is obviously has great standing with Pittsburgh still. He's coming back willing to mentor a current player. And Freiermuth was apparently the player that Heath felt like he wanted to do it for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's great news. And again, I think some of that may have came from the whole Heath and Muth thing and them Pittsburgh kind of adopting Pat Freiermuth as the new Heath Miller, even though it's so soon in his career, not even 2 years in yet. But I'm very interested to see what will happen with his play and his performance with the help from Heath Miller. So Heath Miller being the fourth guy in that Steelers Hall of Honor.
Look at this and say that this is probably the first tight end that Pittsburgh invested highly in since Heath.
Yep.
Being a second-round pick. Pittsburgh had some guys like Jesse James, but he was a fifth-round pick. Nobody really expected Jesse to become a starting tight end and really be the feature guy there. When you were talking about Heath Miller always being open, it just made me remember that so many times Ben would extend the play and Heath would originally be a pass blocker, and then he would just peel off, go find an empty spot and sit there. And the two of them had such tremendous chemistry. Heath knew exactly what Ben was thinking. Ben knew exactly what Heath was thinking. And Ben knew that when he threw the ball to Heath, he was going to catch it.
Yep.
And that's why he was that security blanket. When plays broke down, he was looking for Heath, man. And that was so fun. And I think we're going to see a little bit of that this year. When plays break down, these quarterbacks, whoever it ends up being, even if it's multiple guys throughout the season, one guy starting early in the year, one guy starting later, or an injury happens or whatever, I think these guys are really going to lean on Pat, because I think Pat is that same kind of dependable guy. Like you said, people are always going low on him, and he loves to run people over. So I'm really looking forward to it. You know, maybe it's the homer in me, maybe it's the Penn State fan in me, but maybe it's just the fact that I really love the idea of them investing so highly in a tight end and a guy so all around and with the right mentality and not scared to block and not scared to run somebody over and tremendous hands. And I'm all in on Pat, man. I got to get myself a Freiermuth jersey.
You're going to invest in that already, my guy.
I don't see any way he doesn't get a second contract. I have a Jesse James jersey in my closet, for crying out loud.
That is fair. And it's important to note, just because I want to bring it up out of
Yes.
The curiosity that I had. 2005 was Heath Miller's rookie year. He was fourth in voting for NFL AP Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was fourth in the voting, and so now I'm just kind of curious, Pat Fryermuth, where he stood on that list. I'm just curious.
I don't know if he got any votes, to be honest.
He probably didn't, which is fine, but I'm just somewhat curious. Okay, so it didn't say anything, so I'm assuming he didn't get any votes, so that's fine.
No, because probably anybody that would have voted him voted for Najee.
That's fair. That is fair.
That was a disadvantage being a second round pick with Najee being a first, because Heath was a first.
Yep, that's true. But that being said, moving on to yesterday was day 5 of Steelers training camp. Steelers released outside linebacker Tyree Johnson, and signed wide receiver Javon McKinley. McKinley is 6'1", 216 pounds, ran a 4.6 40. Not blazing speed by any means whatsoever.
Nope. Not at all. You have to assume that this is just a reaction to the wide receiver lines being a little thin with Chase Claypool missing a few days, Deontay Johnson not practicing yet. So they just needed another wide receiver body. This is a guy that's had a shot on a couple of teams already. I want to say he was like a 2019 or 2020 draft class when he came out, but hasn't really made a splash yet in the NFL. So expect him to run with the third, fourth team offenses. I don't really expect anything crazy there other than just this is another person to go out there and make sure the lines aren't too short. Make sure guys are getting appropriate rest in between reps. On day 5, also past that Tyree Johnson release and Javon McKinley signing, both Najee Harris and Jeremy McNichols, the brand new running back to the team, went down on the same day. Najee, apparently somebody just stomped on his foot, and then they were just being cautious and held him out.
Yep.
Because why in the world would you take a chance with your running back like that? And then Jeremy McNichols was a shoulder. Again, I did not hear anything about a significant injury there. So imagine he'll be held out for a little while. But that opens up opportunity for other guys like undrafted free agent Jaylen Warren getting way more snaps. Talking about him in Backs on Backers, saying that he had a tremendous day in Backs on Backers in the first day of pads there. Really just stoning guys when they came after him. Nobody was getting by him. Nobody was getting through him. And he's a real stout dude. Of the two undrafted free agent running backs, Mateo Durant was the one getting all the publication, right? Yep. Everybody's talking about him. He's the speedster. He's the one that's going to turn the corner. He's the one turning heads, right? Not right now. Not right now. It's the bigger, stronger Jaylen Warren who's really doing it in camp right now. So expect to hear his name more, especially as the camp gets more physical and he gets a chance to show his toughness.
Yeah, and speaking of bigger, stronger, Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell. Boz for president. You know what I mean? Kickers matter too. He got a 4-year extension worth $20 million. With that being said, that ties him for the number 1 ranked or highest paid NFL kicker in NFL history. So great accomplishment for him. Big news for him there. That's exciting. Again, you think back in the day, he was after Sweejum and the Jeff Reed era where he was basically like last ditch effort to get someone in there. And he turned the corner real well. Had one off season a little bit and was just, not in it. Very similar to how maybe not the same reasons, obviously, but very similar to how I felt about Presley Harvin last year, who also, speaking of him, has come into camp losing a ton of weight. So I'm excited about that. I think he was down 15 or 20 pounds from what he was. So that's phenomenal. I'm assuming he lost some fat, put on muscle. That would be astonishing. Excited to see him in person when we go down there. So, yeah, great for Boz, for sure.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that extension, man. Honestly, Boz really deserves it. If it wasn't for the fact that Justin Tucker also plays in the AFC, he'd be going to the Pro Bowl every year. That's how
every year.
And even some years, he ends the season with better numbers than Tucker, and Tucker still goes just because at a certain point in time, it's the reputation. and it doesn't matter whether or not Boswell has better numbers. It'll take Tucker missing like 4 or 5 field goals in a season and Boswell only missing 1 or 2 for him to get in above him.
Yeah.
So let's just hope that Tucker decides to retire after the season so Bos can start putting some Pro Bowl years together.
Yeah.
Or gets traded to the NFC.
100%. Two not off topic things, but two previous wide receivers or former Steeler wide receiver news. James Washington of the Dallas Cowboys this year did go down with an injury, had some kind of foot fracture that he will be out for, I believe, 6 to 10 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks, something like that. So he will be out probably week 1, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Week 1 through 4, potentially, actually. And then also Juju Smith-Schuster, I believe today or yesterday, tweeted out that today was the hardest practice of my NFL career and we're just getting started. A slight jab, I might say, at Pittsburgh Steelers training camp or training or whatever. So take that as you will.
Yeah. Interesting. That's the first shot he's taken at Pittsburgh, really.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited to see if we cross paths with them. I don't think we play them this year, right? We do not play the Chiefs.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember if we play the Chiefs or not.
I don't think we do, but I'll double check while we're talking about division rival player.
Yeah. So big news. We've been waiting for a while now, a good 3-4 weeks, to hear what the result was of Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, what will be the punishment for his transgressions off the field. The judge in this case decided that 6 weeks was plenty of a punishment for him as far as the suspension. Worth noting in her ruling, he is not allowed to see any massage therapists except for ones at the team facility through the team itself. Which, if he didn't do anything wrong, he certainly would not have a restriction like that on him. So that in itself, I do believe, is something basically saying, hey, guy's a scumbag and he did some really, really bad things. So let's put some limitations on him to make sure he doesn't do it again. Because otherwise, why in the world would you have that? If he didn't do anything wrong, you're not putting that stipulation on there. It's kind of like when there was only 12 women accusing, and he said, I didn't do anything wrong, and I'll never pay any of them because of it. Well, since then, he has paid all of them hush money, agreed to settlements outside of court, which he said he would never do with any of them because he didn't do anything wrong, and he has now agreed to with all of them.
Yep.
So that kind of shows you a little bit of a change as far as the thought of how guilty one Deshaun Watson may be. I'm not going to talk about any specifics of what he did, just that kind of looks like he's a vile human being. And if you're a female fan, you ought to be pretty pissed off at the NFL for not having a more severe punishment, but it's not over because this was just an independent arbitrator.
And the Cleveland Browns for paying him to begin with.
Yeah, honestly, Cleveland should have never even considered signing a guy like this. When they had a guy like Baker Mayfield with a very clean history, he was entertaining, if anything, off the field and wasn't causing any drama. For crying out loud, he's married and doing all these commercials about your stadium being his home. Like, it was an awful move. It was an awful move PR-wise. I will not be surprised one bit if the NFL decides to punish him further than just the 6 games.
Yep.
Because it's a real slap on the wrist for what he did.
Especially when you have guys like Martavis Bryant who are still out of the league indefinitely for weed.
Well, Martavis could have come back by now.
That's true. He would have had to file something.
His suspension's over. It's just he screwed himself for being gone so long. Nobody wanted to give him another chance.
Yeah, but there's still guys that
test positive like 20 times. That's your own fault.
There were still guys who are spending longer suspensions for lesser things.
There's a guy that just gambled on a game that wasn't even his own game on the bye week and got a year-long suspension. Like, how are we going to tell women that they don't matter like that? That's basically what you're saying. And what's worse is it was a female judge.
Yep.
Like, how can you, if you have daughters, how can you look at them at night and say, oh, yeah, I think what I did was right?
And who knows? Who knows what happened behind the scenes? I'm not I am a partial conspiracy theorist, but that's beside the point. Who knows what happened behind closed doors with her or what happened with that. So I'm not going to speculate on any of it. All I'm going to say is Cleveland's being Cleveland, and they'll get what's coming for them, which is TJ Watt and Cam Hayward sacks pancake. So sandwich, whatever you want to call it. That's going to do it for the news section.
Honest. If we hit Baker 9 times last year in one game, and their offensive line actually took steps backwards by losing J.C. Trotter, and now they're going to start their 6th-round pick from a few years ago, who's like Kendrick Green but smaller, less athletic, shorter arms, worse blocker. Man, they could really have a field day against that offensive line as far as rushing the passer. They still need to figure out stopping the run better than they did previously. But as far as pass rushing against these offensive linemen, they're not very good at it, and they're just a year older.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that for sure. We are moving on. Excuse me, I got to get back in front of the mic. We are moving on to the winners and losers from training camp. James, I have 3 winners.
Yeah.
And 3. No, I have 2 losers. I'm only going to stick with 2. I have 4 winners. What do you want me to do?
I just want to go kind of through position by position, but tell me your winners and losers, and then I'm going to tell you guys that stick out for me from any of the position groups.
Okay, so quarterback, the winners right now, technically are Mason Rudolph. Mason's having a phenomenal camp so far, definitely lighting up the stat board. I'm going to go through winners, then I'll go through losers. The next winner is Warren, the running back, who's had ample opportunities to make a name for himself, and he's doing that. Benny Snell, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, even the other guy, like you said, Durant, all need to be concerned because this guy's coming for their job. Najee's Najee, whatever.
Yeah, Najee's fine.
Yeah. George Pickens, number 3 winner, hands down, has been making some acrobatic catches. Reminds me a lot of AB without the noise so far, which I'm saying so far because we all saw that draft video on how he got drafted and what he was wearing and him just standing there being a weirdo. That could have just been being for fun, but I don't know. So I'm not going to say anything else yet. And then the last winner I'm going to have is Arthur Mollett. I think Arthur Mollett is getting opportunities. From what I'm reading and seeing from camp, Arthur Mollett is standing out as a potential to make the back end of the roster, and specifically for like a slot corner position. So he's getting opportunities with that. My losers, Kenny Pickett, because he's having a rough camp. I'm not worried about it, but technically he's a loser in camp right now. And then my 2 other losers are at the cornerback position as well. Justin Lane and can't remember his name. That's how unimportant it is. Why?
You're talking James Pierre?
Yes, Justin Lane and James Pierre. Those are my 2 losers because they're just not doing anything. I haven't seen their names pop up in any good situation. One of them, I think it was Pierre, got beat on a deep ball pretty bad. Those guys, I just expected more out of them, especially Pierre. Pierre came off a good year, kind of.
There's been some ups and downs with both of those guys, but I've heard more positive on Lane than I have on Pierre. I've heard Lane getting a few breakups. Looks like he's looking a little bit better than he has in previous camps, but he's not been very good in previous camps. So that's kind of a tough measuring stick. Chris Steele has had some splash plays already this year in the secondary, so I'm excited to hear more about how he's done. Also, I hear a lot of good things about DeMonte KZ and his communication skills back there. They're really kind of impressed. A lot of the corners are talking really good about him.
Good.
In the linebacker room, TJ Watt is just being ridiculous, breaking stuff up, pick sixes, punting the ball into the stands. Like TJ's doing some stupid stuff right now, which is great to hear. Middle linebacker room, basically everybody has had splash days. Mark Robinson has shown well in backs on backers. He's actually shown real well in pass coverage drills too, which is fantastic because that was the biggest question mark. How's this guy that's only played middle linebacker 1 year going to do in pass coverage? You know, maybe a lot more people can run and hit because it's more just non-thinking and being an athlete and just go hit the guy with the ball. But when you're in pass coverage, there's a lot going on there, and it really takes a good head on your shoulders and good open field agility too. And it sounds like he's really got that. definitely hearing some things about Buddy Johnson. Ulysses Gilbert apparently had a really nice day today. Marcus Allen's missing out, man. He's like the only linebacker who really hasn't made a splash on any day at the middle linebacker. Spillane's got some picks. Devin Bush making some plays. Miles Jack is just tearing it up. He sounds like he's having a tremendous preseason thus far. And all these guys are talking about the influence that Brian Flores has had in coaching them and how he expects perfection. Well, when you expect that kind of perfection, man, sometimes you get it. So I'm really excited about the progression of these middle linebackers right now and it being a difficult thing to figure out who's going to make the roster there. Defensive line, I am hearing some nice things about DeMarvin Leal so far. It's kind of difficult because Larry Ogunjobi hasn't practiced in any team sessions yet. The entire time so far, we've still had Tyson Alualu on the PUP list, so he isn't getting any reps. So this is giving some real opportunities to the young defensive linemen. And it sounds like DeMarvin Leal making the most of it. And I'm hearing some good things about Carlos Davis as well, but I still think he's kind of on the outside looking in as far as that whole thing.
Yeah.
O-line, I haven't really heard a ton of any of these guys really splashing too much. But your guy Owens sounds like he's having a nice camp, moving around a little bit from guard to center. So that's really optimistic to hear that sort of thing for sure. The more you can do, right? That's who Pittsburgh keeps when they're talking that last offensive lineman. They keep people that can play multiple positions. If he can show that he can play both guard positions and center, got a decent chance, man.
Oh, 100%.
George Pickens just lighting it up, and it's really exciting to see the breakaway speed of Calvin Austin III.
Yep.
Really showing out, and I'm hearing a lot of good with Anthony Miller. Sounds like he's running with the first team offense a lot.
Yep.
So that's exciting with Anthony Miller possibly stepping in. Deontay Johnson sitting out is really creating a lot of opportunities for these other wide receivers. And it does sound like Anthony Miller is taking advantage of these opportunities.
I would not be surprised if Deontay Johnson signs a lesser deal to get on the field and to prove his worth. If Deontay Johnson is the person that I think he is, and that's saying a lot because I don't personally know him. But if he is who I think he is, he will sign a lesser deal, slightly lesser, nothing crazy, to get on the field and prove his worth.
21 or 22 to get out there instead of taking 23 or 4.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm leaning towards as well, is that Pittsburgh gets a deal done, and it's in that 21 and a half range, something like that.
Maybe even 19, who knows?
Yeah. Now that the Boswell deal's done, they have admitted, Omar Khan had a press conference today. He admitted that contract talks have been happening with Deontay Johnson. So they're trying to get a deal done with him. And again, Deontay is the most talented receiver on the team right now, but I think he's smart. And he sees what's happening out there. He's watching these drills. He's watching George Pickens flash like crazy. He's watching this itty bitty wide receiver with tons of speed that he doesn't have, making some plays and taking some stuff to the house, which he doesn't do too often. And he's saying, man, if I don't get a deal done soon, they might not do one with me and just roll with Claypool and the 2 rookies. And I might be sitting there on the sidelines wondering what the heck's going on and not getting a deal and being the only wide receiver really that's a big name wide receiver that's available to get a deal that doesn't get one.
Yep.
So I'm real worried about that if I'm him.
I am right there with you. So
every day George Pickens makes another ridiculous catch, I'm saying, God, I got to get back out there.
You're not wrong. So yeah, those are the winners and losers of camp. We're real excited to go down and be there in person Friday and Saturday. So reminder, make sure you guys come. James wants to talk about the quarterbacks real quick.
You're right. How did I give it away? Was that good sign language?
It was great sign language. I was hoping you weren't going to bring it up, but it's going to happen. Okay, I got to sit up.
We talked briefly about this. I'm not as worried about Kenny Pickett as some people would be, just because he's been running with the third team almost exclusively. He finally got some reps with the second team and had a better day. And you should expect that, because now you're talking about better quality wide receivers. You're talking about better quality offensive linemen blocking for him. So don't get too worried about the fact that he wasn't looking great in the first few days of camp. I'm not concerned about it. you shouldn't be either, because the wide receivers he's thrown to aren't even going to make the practice squad at that point.
I don't expect him to have a good camp at all. Let's be real. As a rookie as a rookie quarterback, first round or not, I don't expect him to have a good camp. Period.
Ooh. No, I mean, to go back to it, Patrick Mahomes, his first 6 practices, he threw 7 interceptions his rookie year. 7. Pickett's a hell of a lot less than that right now, I'll tell you that. And some of that is opportunity. He's not getting anywhere near as many reps because they're splitting it evenly between the 3 right now. And poor Chris Oladokun hasn't had a snap yet. You got to feel bad for him. But I'm not concerned about him. And then as far as Mason versus Mitch, Mitch is just having some headaches because he's going against that first-team defense. I think he's going to show a little bit better when he starts going against live defenses on opposing teams, just because nobody really has a pass rush like Pittsburgh does. And not even nobody really does. Nobody does.
Maybe the closest would be probably the Bills or the Rams. That's probably the closest.
Yeah, and none of them have TJ Watt, who's just like reading the lanes and breaking up passes every other friggin' play. And Wormley's getting his hands on balls, and Cam Hayward collapsed in the middle. And, like, that's a tough defense to go against, man. And they're not allowed to hit him, but still they're making things happen, which is making his life difficult. And then you get to the second-team defense and the second-team offense, and let's be real, Pittsburgh's got some depth at wide receiver right now, right? We've got Zach Gentry as the number 2 tight end who's shown some skill. We've got some wide receivers where that back part of the roster is going to be a difficult one to determine who's going to be the number 5 and 6 receiver. Are there going to be 6 receivers? But you've got some skill levels still going on there. But the cornerback room, once you get past the top 3, really drops off. So I think Mason's kind of got an advantage, and that's showing in his stat lines right now. He's completing 70% of his passes in practice, which is significantly higher than the other guys. And he doesn't have any interceptions with 4 touchdowns. Like, he's looking good, and some of that is situational.
Yep.
Because he really is having, I think, a little better opportunity with what he's got to work with on offense versus what he's working against on defense. And I'm guessing you probably weren't thinking I was going to go that way with the conversation.
Not necessarily, no. But I also did not expect it. All these people who are praising Mason Rudolph for how he's playing.
He should look good.
He should look good.
He's been there 5 years.
He knows the playbook. He understands the way the team operates, and he has chemistry with the players, and he has the better offensive line, the better talent on the field with him. He should be doing better. B, I could probably go out there and play decent at a position in a game or in a practice where I'm not worried about getting hit. I don't think people understand how differently he played after his concussion.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think people have understand that. And maybe he's gotten a chance to fully come back from that, fully, reiterate himself into the game mentally and emotionally and physically. But that year when he was playing, 13 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The last 2 years, he's 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He was 2-1 in 2020 and then 1-1 in 2021. Obviously not playing in as many games, whatever. You would still expect to see a better touchdown to interception ratio out of someone who's getting better. I don't think he's comfortable in the pocket in a game with actual pressure. I don't think he's comfortable scrambling with actual pressure. I don't think he's going to be the same player we see in practice. And this happens all the time. I've talked about this before. This happens in high school sports. This happens in college sports. Players can come in and light up practice. But then going out there on field against people, full contact in any sport is always different than practice. That's why you don't see these YouTubers out here going crazy with basketball highlights, making it to the NBA, because backyard basketball practice is different than on the field or on the court going up against other superstars. It's just different.
Half of what they do is traveling.
Fair.
But yeah, I mean, in previous years, we had a wide receiver named Justin Hunter. And Justin Hunter was like 6'4", really athletic, always looked amazing in preseason and training camp. And then you'd go to the games, he couldn't catch a ball, he couldn't run a route, and you're like, what the heck, man? We hear all these things about this great stuff he's doing in practice, and he can't ever put it together in the field. Well, he never did. No matter what team he played for in his NFL career, he never put it together on the field. That's just who he was as a player. He was a great practice guy, not good real life guy. And I think you're not too far off on this. Honestly, I felt like the year that Mason Rudolph got hurt, he was starting to put it together. He was starting to move well in the pocket. He had a good feel for where the pressure was coming from. And then that a-hole just launched himself helmet to helmet, a 5'11" guy going face to face with a 6'5" guy, which shows you how far he launched himself off his feet to make it happen. And knocked him out. And Mason was he was gun shy after that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no way around it. He was nervous about getting hit like that again and getting knocked out cold, and you can't blame him for it. So I think once he fully gets over that fear, if he ever fully gets over that fear, then he can take the next step. But he may never get over that. Is he still dealing with it? I don't know. You don't know. We'll find out this preseason, hopefully. If he looks like $1 million and he's moving around and making all the throws and everything, okay, maybe he got over it. If he looks like the same Mason that we've seen the last 4 years, then he's probably in the same place and he may never make that next step.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. And we're going to have to wait and see to see what happens there, because I can't tell you, quite frankly.
Nobody can.
I don't. Here's the fact, the straight line, James. I'm being straight honest. I don't care who the quarterback is for Pittsburgh as long as we're winning.
That's it, man.
If it's Mason, that's great.
If Mason wins, though, and he wins the starting job, and we're winning like 4 out of every 6 games, are you all right with it?
4 out of every 6. So at some point, we're sitting at 8-4. I think it depends on the loss. It depends on how we're losing games.
You're not happy with Mason if we're 8-4 with him as a starting QB?
I'm happy, but it depends on how we're losing. If we're losing games, because if we lose all 4 of those on a pick 6 in the last 30 seconds, no, I'm not happy.
8 with him throwing game-winning touchdown passes in the final seconds.
8 game-winning touchdown passes under 30 seconds.
And 4 game-losing interceptions.
I'm conflicted, James. I'm conflicted.
I love this. This is good. This is good radio right here, man.
I'm conflicted because that's a 2-to-1 ratio. It's not perfect,
but it'll
obviously.
Get you in the playoffs.
I think at that point it comes down to who we're losing to. I will always come up with another reason for it to come down to something else. If we're losing to the top teams in the AFC or top teams in the NFC, we're not going to get anywhere. Or if we're losing to the worst teams, I'd rather lose to a middle of the ground team. If we're losing to the Detroit Lions, again, sorry, we tied them. Sorry.
Basically a loss.
If we're not beating teams like that, no, I'm not happy, because that should be the easy part. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. So I
feel that.
Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Duck Hodges, it could be anybody, okay? Chris Olajuwon, it could be him. I don't care. I hope he comes in for 1 7-on-7 or 7-shot thing while we're down there, and he throws a touchdown in like 3 seconds. I hope it's just a bullet.
Yeah.
I'll go nuts.
To Jay Sternberger.
Nah, it'll be the freaking Warren out of the backfield in motion.
Did you see Jay Sternberger? Completely off subject, but still on the subject. The 7-on-7 shots from yesterday, they only scored twice on it. And the second score was a shovel pass to Jay Sternberger.
I love that kind of stuff. We used to do that with Miller all the time.
Yeah, and then we started doing it with Juju all the time, and it worked for like the first year, and then everybody was looking for it after.
I don't like it with Juju. I don't like it with a receiver. I like it with a tight end.
Yeah, it's a little better chance.
All right. Well,
speaking of better chance, you've got a great chance of seeing us at Latrobe if you go Friday or Saturday. So let's talk about it. Hit us up on social media. We would love to hang out with you, shake some hands, kiss some babies, take some pictures. Let's go.
If we're there and you see us and you say hi, you will get a shout out on the pod, on social media, every aspect of it. We will be so hyped to see you guys. Again,
post a selfie picture with us.
Duh.
Us and you on our Facebook, on our Instagram, if you come say hi to us. Just saying.
All right. With that being said, you guys already know how it is. We can't thank you guys enough for listening, watching, whatever. Be sure to follow and subscribe and like on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Give those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's what James is saying with his hands right now. Don't worry about it. And until next time, this is your host, James and Cody, signing off.
Peace.